gonna be all that's gonna be. Give it up's gonna be alright.
So my channel's been around now for almost a year. Honestly, I'm really happy with the way things have taken off. I'm now just over 1,300 subscribers, which is a really big deal. But one of the things that I've never really sat down and done is actually explain a bit more about what my own personal position in this is. People who've been following my channel since the very beginning have probably noticed most, if not all, of my videos, barring one or two, have pretty much just been addressing trans issues. This was never my initial intention of the way the channel was going to go, but there's no doubt that it has now become effectively what I'm known for, and it's not something that I feel particularly bad about. In fact, I'm quite happy to be doing this. So I think it's important to actually explain how I came to the position that I'm at now, what and exactly why I have a problem with the way that the trans community has grown and why I speak out against a lot of what they are doing, certainly more so than any other group. So before I go into that, I think it's fair to actually just explain more about what my own personal politics are. I'm sure this doesn't come as a surprise to a lot of people, but I would consider myself a classic liberal, certainly with a libertarian leaning to it. I believe that government should be as small as it possibly can be, and I'm a big believer in individualism, the idea that someone should be taking responsibility for themselves, and what's more, respecting other people's own individuality as well. This shouldn't really be that important when you consider talking about the trans community, but as someone who would fall into what they say, it kind of does matter, and I will be touching on exactly why that is. So why exactly is it that I speak out against the trans community so much? Well, the story begins a long time ago, about 2008. So this was the year when I actually came out as being transsexual. It was a difficult position to be in. Not a lot of people accepted it at the time, and my transition was at first quite slow. But at this time there wasn't a lot of understanding of transsexuals, let alone the multi-gendered universe that we now live in. If you were to hear a trans story in the news, it would usually be on someone transitioning, or oh, it turns out that this person is a transsexual. A lot of it was very sensationalized. And so when I started my transition, it was in this fairly weird world of not a lot of people understanding what was happening. So I started my transition whilst I was in university, and universities back around 2009, 2010 were in a very different way to what they are now. There was an LGBT group as part of my university. I was the lone trans person in it. In fact, I didn't even realise that the likes of NBs and multi-genders, gender fluid, non-binary, I didn't have any idea any of this actually existed until I went to an NUS LGBT conference. That's right, the amount of times I've criticised the NUS, and I was actually a part of it. So at this conference, that was when I first came into contact with what you would consider an NB. And these people, even at the time, were very, very offended that people didn't have any idea as to what they were. I would meet a lot of AFAB NBs who I would assume were trans men, and they would get very offended if you were to use he pronouns. They would be like, I am a they. Why can't anyone respect that I am a they? And my response to that would usually be, why would they call you they? That's just that's a collective term. And there was this weird instance of hostility, and this was also where I came into contact with a lot of trans women who had no intention of being able to pass or have any kind of transition, and they were considered to be respected. One person in particular that I remember had apparently been arrested a couple of weeks earlier when it was William and Kate's wedding. This was a massive outrage because a male police officer searched her, but she didn't look like a woman at all. In fact, when I saw her, I thought it was someone that was just trying to be like a trans man who passed very, very well, but it turned out actually it was just a shaved head, non-transitioning trans woman who was offended that a man searched her and not a woman. And in the whole conference, a lot of people there were like, yes, this is an outrage, but there was some of us that were thinking like, what the hell? So the NUS conference was my first actual experience with what I would now call the gender radicals. And in a way, I'm quite glad that that was. At this point, this is when I was just about to start my hormones, and at the time, there was one other trans person that I knew, and believe it or not, that trans person was Paris Lees. Now, yeah, she is quite a big name. This is when she was just kind of starting out. We got talking online, and she was in a very different mindset back then. Regardless of how much I disagree with some of her positions now, she did help me at this time, and she was the only one there, and I'm very glad that it was just her and nobody else. And bear in mind, I was transitioning at a completely different part of the country as well, where I had a couple of friends that I could rely on. My transition was completely separate to the rest of the community. And in a way, this kind of helped build up a lot of my own political beliefs of self-reliance. By the time I eventually moved down to London, I'd already been on hormones for a while, I'd started the full NHS process, I had managed to get myself jobs and quite well-paying jobs, and even at the times where I did have unemployment, I was still able to work hard because I had already been giving myself the mindset that if I don't work for it, I'm not going to get it. But it was about this time that I first experienced the queer community, as it is known, within London. The queer community in London is generally quite interesting because there's a lot of well-meaning, very nice people, and in fact a lot of people who do have their shit put together. The problem with the queer community though is that there is a unspoken, overarching voice that radicals seem to have where they can control a conversation just by clicking their fingers. Then you get the people who don't work, the people who have no intention of working, the people who have no intention of passing. And all of a sudden, whatever reasonableness a lot of these people have seems to be thrown out of the window so they can be seen white knighting and cuddling and loving all these people. And in turn, this just reinforces what I eventually found out to be quite a big narrative within the trans community, and this is that people can't achieve anything, that the world is out to get you. Now, when you have people who transition in this bubble, who only hear about how mean the world is, any drive that they have to achieve seems to disappear. Soon after I moved to London, I did actually have a previous channel, originally where I would put up a couple of videos about my transition. I've taken these offline because a lot of them are cringe. One day I might revisit them, but I would share them on Reddit. I remember one particular instance where I had shared a video after it had been announced that I was having my gender reassignment surgery. And it was a video where I was very, very happy and I was very like, I can't believe this is happening, this is great. And after an hour though, the link to my video was taken down from the subreddit. I messaged a moderator to find out why this is, and I was told that I had privilege and that I was gloating in front of trans people who hadn't started their transition yet. I was given a long list of people who I had privilege over, and the list ended with trans people who don't even know that they are trans. And so this was my first actual experience with the community trying to pull people down. Someone who is actively saying, I am achieving something, that could not be shown because that was unfair to people who haven't achieved or aren't trying to achieve. But this was all still at a time when the trans community was nowhere near as vocal as it is now. In fact, it's only in the last couple of years that things seem to have really exploded. So a lot of this is more background, but there's still a couple of triggers that I need to point out that really kick-started the channel. So I mentioned about my experiences within the so-called queer community, and this was around 2017 when my Facebook feed had been filled up with all genders are valid, and I thought, screw it, I'm going to challenge someone on this. So I asked them, are all genders valid? What about water gender? What about the moon? And I mention these a lot in my videos, and this is the reason why. Because all of a sudden I had a lot of people coming in and actually defending these genders, saying, yes, these are valid genders. And so I tried asking, what do these transitions look like? Why are these as valid as mine? I wasn't able to get much of a response, except for, they're all valid, they're all valid. And when I tried to play my power card, so to speak, and say, I can't believe all you cis people are telling a trans woman what is and what isn't trans, all of a sudden everyone else then played their NB cards, despite the fact that none of them are transitioning, but now all of a sudden they are the experts on this. And because of the weird way in which intersectionality works, whilst a trans woman is considered more oppressed than a cis woman, an NB is considered more oppressed than a trans woman because nobody knows what an NB is. So therefore, by the rules of intersectional politics, they win. That really was a big moment for me. I'd seen a lot of videos on YouTube in particular, a lot of the anti-SJW commentators out there. When I actually saw this happening in my own life, that was when it really kicked into me that this is who is representing me in public. These are the people who are saying, we speak on behalf of trans people. As crazy as I'd seen in the past, this is when that wake-up moment really was, and I felt I have to do something here. I'm now being told that I can't talk about it. You know, I have to be able to talk about this stuff. And if I'm being told I can't talk about it, and I'm trans, what does that say about any of you? Can you talk about this? Well, no, by the rules of intersectionality, like, how many of my viewers are going to be cis-het white men? You're at the bottom of the pile when it comes to them. Your opinion is dirt. What if you're a cis-het white woman? Well, all of a sudden, you know, you can't say what a woman is anymore, despite the fact that you're a woman. And then you're pushed to the bottom of the pile as well. Trans activists are going about everything in completely the wrong way. Now, I'm not saying that the trans community and the trans rights activists are the only ones who do this. If you can name any kind of movement which is built around some sort of identity, whether it's sex-based, whether it's race-based, whether it's anything, you will encounter a very similar kind of politics. So why is it that I criticise the trans movement more than, say, the gender-critical movement? There are issues that I might have with some views that gender-critical feminists hold. The main reason why I'm critical of the trans movement is because they claim to speak for me whilst telling me I don't have a voice. I'm called true scum, I'm called a quisling, a traitor, a trans token. I'm ignored by people when I, as a trans woman, try and explain what my view on things are. They do not have to accept what I say. And that's important because I am not an expert. I'm not going to be any more of an expert in the same way that people on either extreme of this debate are going to be. I might disagree with someone like Kirsty E, but I would never call her scum. I would never call her a traitor. I'd never call her dirt. But the same from that side happens to me on a regular basis. The idea that I should hold a particular belief simply because of who I am is a feeling which is just completely ridiculous. What you are as a person does not dictate your own beliefs. You should be able to be gay and conservative and not have that be a controversial opinion. You should be able to be transsexual and say the word transsexual and not have that be controversial. What's more, by claiming that they speak for me, these are the people who are being invited onto shows, into newspapers, by the government. They get to go and explain that they speak on behalf of a whole group of people which they don't have anything in common with except for whether they have gender dysphoria or not. And believe me, some of these people don't even have that. And they make arguments such as being trans should be demedicalised, which I think is an absolutely abhorrent idea. And they do that in my name. Where's my invite? Why wasn't I at the meeting when this was decided? We don't live in a collective, and nor should we claim to be a collective. The toxicity of identity politics means that whoever shouts the loudest gets to claim they represent a whole group of people. When you're looking at it on the outside, it can look ridiculous. When you're forced inside that group, it can be scary. As I see trans people who speak out against this, they get their accounts removed from social media, some of whom might even get in trouble with the police. This seems to be very much a one-way street. I don't see this happening to the radicals. There's plenty of topics that I do want to talk on. But for the foreseeable future, this channel is probably going to be dedicated to talking about these problems. So what do I actually believe? I believe that in order to be considered as a transsexual, someone would need to have gender dysphoria. You would need, if you want to be respected as a man or a woman, you are welcome to believe that. If you want society to treat you in that way, you need to be able to make a meaningful transition. Simply coming out as trans and saying, therefore I am a woman and this is a woman's body, is not gonna wash it with anyone, and you cannot expect it to. So if you want people to see you as a woman or a man, you need to be able to present in that way to society. It is not your role to redefine what these terms are. Everyone knows what these terms mean. We do not strictly fit it. So it is up to us to fit it as much as we can. We take responsibility for ourselves as individuals. We do not force a collective to accept us. If you make a meaningful transition as I have, the vast majority of people will have no problem with seeing you the way you want to be seen and respecting you in that way. I am able to go out every day and have people treat me with respect, treat me the way that I would like, without a second thought referring to me as a woman. I don't get asked what my pronouns are. But I've had to work for this. I didn't always look this way. I mean, hell, you can look at me a few months ago and I didn't look this way. But I didn't sound this way either. I didn't used to have breasts. I didn't used to have, you know, I didn't used to have all this stuff. This has been a very long process, but this is what it takes. It's essential to be able to deal with who you are. You can't rush hormones. You can't rush surgeries. You can't rush any of this stuff. And when it finally happens, when you finally reach that end point, it's such a great feeling of normality in your life, and you feel much happier for it. It doesn't fix all your problems, and it never will. But it fixes a pretty major problem. And this whole idea of simply being able to say, I am a man, I am a woman, and you've got your big beer gut, you got your black generic band t-shirt and crappy jeans on, frizzy, scraggly, unkempt hair, stubble, and you expect people to call you a woman. If you have gender dysphoria, how are you happy with that? How are you happy looking in the mirror like that? Are you trying to delude yourself and the world around you? I don't say that to be mean, I'm being serious. That's something which you need to be able to make these changes. And this whole idea of automatically saying, I am a woman, you've got to earn it. Before you can say it, you've got to earn it. What I want for trans rights is generally what we have now, built on respect. I like people to be able to respect me for who I am. This is why, for me, people refer to me as a man. It is entirely my choice to leave that conversation, and generally that is my limit. I don't try and shut that person down or get them arrested, but I like to think I've earned the respect to get where I am now, that I can be treated as a woman by society because I have worked at it, and I respect what that means to people, because it is not my place to completely redefine it. I know that my views on this are going to be controversial and on both sides. Now, I know that there are trans activists out there who will just scoff at the thought of having to take personal responsibility for themselves, but there is also going to be some gender critical people out there who will think absolutely no. They'll take a Ben Shapiro approach to it of, I'm only going to refer to you by biology, which, let's face it, if you're looking at someone who looks very much like a woman, it is a bit ridiculous to be like, I have to refer to this person as he. It doesn't hurt to respect the pronouns. And that respect goes both ways. You've got to be able to win having the other person say it. You can't demand it. I hope this video has given people a bit more of an understanding as to what my whole position is. Just as a quick summary, I'm sick of having a community claim to speak for me. There is a better way of being able to take all this forward. I hope you've been able to understand a little bit more about what my positions are. I would love to be someone that you can look to, even if you don't agree with everything I say, and believe me, you're not going to agree with everything I say, because you're an individual and so am I. But I hope that you can look at me and think, at least this is someone who isn't following that dogma. I hope that we can just continue to discuss these things, whether we agree or not, with a bit of respect. I hope you've learnt a bit from this video. Also, if you do enjoy any of my content and you would like to support me in any way, I'd just like to announce that I now have a Patreon page. The link will be in the description down below. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please let me know what you think in the comments, and I'll see you all next time.